Hello, this is the final installment of How Do You Write a Unit? We've done steps 1 through 3. The last one is step 4, choosing activities. So, first thing you do is gather these 3 resources. Your UOI template for this unit. Then, for this unit, get your standard analysis document that you did for each standard in the unit. That was the document that you highlighted the verbs in yellow, and you have the I can statements. And then get your assessment that you wrote for this particular unit. So what are we going to do with those things? Well, you're going to start with that standard analysis document, the one that has the I can statements on it, and you're going to read down through that analysis document for the particular standard that we're looking on, because you're going to go do this one standard at a time. You're going to find the items on the assessment that assess that particular standard as well. And then you're going to say, all right, if I read through these things, the I can statements for that one standard, and I've looked at the assessment item, the question for that standard, what activities could I do that would lead students through experiences that would help them understand and finally be successful on that particular assessment item? That's what I'm going to ask myself. It's very likely going to be a progression of activities, because to jump in and just completely just go for that final standard um, doesn't make a lot of sense and doesn't happen very often. But here's the good thing. Those I can statements are also a progression of skills. So you can take that progression of skills in your I can statements if you took the time to do that, and that will make your activities for you. Really helps. Don't forget that activities can be anything that you do in the classroom. They can be games or pre-tests or tests or videos or whatever it is that you're going to do. So those things are activities. And so I want to demonstrate how to do this. So first of all, here's my UOI for this particular unit. And I notice that 3 is this objective that goes with this standard. Student will develop an argument supported by evidence for how multicellular organisms are organized by varying levels of complexity: cells, tissues, organ systems. Yikes. Okay, that's a big thing. All right, let's look at the test questions. So it looks like I have 2 for this particular one. Pick 2 body systems and describe how they might affect one another. Use specific details to support your claim, and include the functions of the organs in your evidence. So that's a little bit easier than this multi-system complexity thing. So maybe we're just going to see, get a little bit of an idea of, can they do a little simpler thing and support with evidence, and then the final question, decide on a progression, doesn't necessarily talk about complexity. Decide on a progression of these things, and then explain why you organized them in the order that you did, and give evidence that includes functions. So probably going to um, talk about complexity here. I put them in alphabetical order. If that's the order, that the progression that you might choose, that would be really hard to include the functions of those body parts as your evidence for that progression. So hopefully they will pick something where they can include the functions, or else they're not going to be at the level of this particular question. All right, and then the third thing, so assessment, unit, and the third thing I want is this analysis document with my I can statements. My I can statements are actually going to help me just write these activities right very now. So I'm going to look at the first one. I can identify the systems and their functions. All right, so I'm going to go back and see what activities I've written so far. And one of the things I've already done is the pretest. And it's possible that this pretest, that may be all I have to do, because it may be that they can already identify systems and their functions left over from another year. If not, I'm going to throw in a few activities, like here's Stan the Man. It's a video. It talks about it's the body. It's fun. It talks about the body systems and their functions, and it's something we can do to review. And it's kind of that entry level, that lower level, so the low floor, and that we're going to start with, so we can get to the high ceiling. And then maybe I do a systems function matching, a concentration game where like here, notice I put how I'm going to, how the kids are going to do this. Like here's individually, here's in a whole group, here's in pairs. There's a variety of things that they're doing. So sometimes they have some help and sometimes they're having to do it independently. And then maybe I have an exit ticket. Maybe I need to find out, okay, you know, do they all, we've done these things. Now do they know how to do, how to still do it, you know? So we have a little exit. This is like a little formative to make sure they're okay. And you know what? From that pretest, I may or may not need these 3 activities, but there they are in case I do. So that takes care of, I can identify systems and their functions. I can compare and contrast. Compare and contrast. So I look and, oh yeah, I did write this one too. Compare and contrast. So we're going to have this hat and it's got all the systems in there. And students, we're going to start in small groups and then we're going to go to pairs and then eventually individually. And they're going to stand up in front of everybody and draw 2 systems out of the hat and then use the functions of the systems to compare and contrast in front of the whole group. So by starting out in small groups and then working your way to individually, it kind of scaffolds it and that way they can, so I've definitely compared and contrasted there. Um, I don't even know, you know, if they do a good job, I wouldn't have to do any more. I don't even know that I need to write like an exit ticket, or you know, I don't know, it depends. If they don't do a great job with this, I might want to do it again, or yeah, have an exit ticket or some kind of an activity. So all right, I've compared and contrasted. Identify some evidence that supports an argument. So this was, you know, down here my final is develop an argument and have evidence, and boy, it's real specific. This is more general, and so this is just to see if we can identify whether evidence actually supports an argument or not. So it's a scaffold to work up to, you know, identifying evidence that supports is a scaffold to giving your own evidence. So let's see, this would be, so you know what I think I'll do? I think I'll do a gallery walk activity here where the students will maybe in pairs or small groups walk around and there'll be, and I would fill out this whole thing, but there would be some arguments, some simpler arguments than the one we're working up to. And then there will be pieces of paper that have pieces of evidence that either will or won't support that particular claim that's on the wall. So maybe I might have all dogs are friendly as one of the arguments, and then maybe one of the pieces of paper says dogs are varying colors from white to black to blah blah blah. That would not be something that they would say supports that, but maybe I've got a table that has some data in it that talks about numbers, and there's many more friendly dogs than not. So that could be a piece of evidence that supports the claim. And each group would have a different one on the wall, and then they would do a gallery walk and they would walk around and see what other people said, and maybe they might like kind of you know, talk about it across the groups and say, I'm not sure you know, maybe they might question why someone did something. So yeah, I think that'll be a good thing to identify some evidence that supports an argument and it gets them up and moving. So then the next thing, explain why a certain piece of evidence supports a particular argument. Well, I actually can put that in this same activity. At the end of this, you know, at the end they're going to explain how they decided on their particular evidence. They're going to stand up in front of everyone and say, well, we thought this, and this would support because of this and this, and maybe not because of this. And then perhaps other people might you know, ask them, or maybe they might refute the claim. I don't know. We'll see. So that looks like I've got these 2 covered. So now I'm down to develop an argument supported by evidence of exactly how are organized in levels of complexity. I still don't think I'm there, because like each one of these things was identifying, but I have not yet supplied my own evidence. As a student, I haven't done that. So I would probably have them make a claim and develop evidence um, and support it. And I probably give them something a little bit simpler. So the claim would be, um, I don't know, something about, I don't know, how about claim something about cells? So either cells are or, okay, how about this? We would be in trouble if we didn't have cells, or we would not be in trouble if we didn't have cells. And then they would make a claim and develop their evidence and support that. So a little bit simpler, but that would be a good activity. And then finally, I would develop evidence and a claim and support my evidence of the complexity of, actually, I think I might ask them to put those four things in cells, tissues, organs, and organ systems and have them put them in order of complexity and then defend why they put them in that order. So that's actually right to that particular standard. So, yeah, I like that because then when they go back to this question where they decide on their own progression, they can use that same progression and then they're talking right to the standard. That's great. And then other kids might rise to the occasion and go, okay, well, I'm going to make a different claim perhaps. Maybe they can, maybe there's another claim, another progression they could decide on. And as long as they made the claim and include specific details of the functions, then that would be a really good thing. In fact, I think developing arguments and supporting with claims, developing claims and supporting with evidence is probably one of the most important things we can have them do, regardless of what things we are, what specific content pieces we're using. So, yeah, I think this is a very good question that can either have them recall or make up their own. And so I think that would be good. So now you notice that the last thing I do, I've got some activities for this particular objective and standard. And what I might do, actually, I think this one also went to the same objective. And so what I might do is look at my culminating activity and make sure my verbs line up. So my verb on the activity says develop evidence and a claim and support that blah, blah, blah about complexity. So develop evidence for a claim and support that evidence. So let's look at the actual standard. Develop an argument supported by evidence. All right. And it's about the complexity. All right. So that is parallel. And so then the last part of this is my question. So here is support your claim with evidence. And here's another one. This is develop a claim and support it with evidence and including the functions. So, and based on complexity or something even more complex. So I feel like there's a really good internal alignment between my verbs, develop and support with evidence, develop and support with evidence, and develop and support with evidence. So that's called internal alignment, and I would do that for all of my standards. So that's how we do it. And basically, take some time. But you know, that is what we do. We are creative and we make awesome activities. And if we get them to the level of the assessment, then we'll know we're doing our job. So if they don't get to the level of that assessment question, then we're probably going to have to go back and do some more activities. And depending on where they fall short, maybe we'll develop some more activities that we can put in here to get them to that level of complexity. All right, well, that is the last step, which is choosing activities and looking at that internal alignment between the verbs and the level of complexity or the depth of knowledge of, between your assessment question, your standard, and your activity. So thank you so much, and bye.